Oh no, not another Big Lundi video. Yes, another Big Lundi video. This one he directs to one of my subscribers, actually, Muskoka Man, I think it is. And, well, he gives a long video, so I'll just get right into it. He'll make a point, and then I'll say why that point should be totally disregarded.
Now, the first question. What definite body of truths have been established by philosophy? Laws of logic, I think, are extremely good, and they can be verified using science. Science can verify these laws of logic, but they are considered laws of logic, and if they are laws of logic, and logic is a part of philosophy, which it is,
or as the kids these days say, epic fail. I remember back when I was a child, I've always been a very logical person. I don't always act like it, but I've always understood logic. Even before I knew a lot of words, I understood that, you know, cause precedes effect. Everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens for no reason. You see what I'm saying? Two contradictory things cannot be true. I assume these are the laws of logic, and there's probably a whole bunch of other ones. I was able to understand things and act in a very logical fashion before I even knew the word logic, let alone philosophy. So, once again, Mr. Lundi, it seems like what philosophy is doing here is just putting things to words. Like, yes, the formalization of logic through language is what philosophy does, but I would just say what it's doing is, as usual, philosophy is, you know, finding a way to state the obvious and then patting itself real hard on the back for doing it.
Then, you know, I think philosophy can relatively take the credit for these things.
Oh yeah, philosophy can take credit for logic, just like religion can take credit for morality.
Something is what it is, and it's not what it's not. Something can't be what it is, and something else at the same time, and others.
AKA the insanely fucking obvious.
But for something that I think is a lot more relatable, the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. Have you ever heard of the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment? I think a lot of people have by now. A lot of people might have heard of it, but don't know exactly what it is. To sum up real quick, Schrodinger essentially came up with a thought experiment of, what if you had a cat in a box, and the box had a mechanism that was set to go off at a certain time, and that mechanism may or may not, like there's a 50-50 chance exactly of letting loose a radioactive element that would kill a cat.
OMFG, it's not the radioactive element that's supposed to kill the cat. The entire purpose of this thought experiment is to actually kind of ridicule the stochastic nature of quantum mechanics, in the sense that if you take some random isotope that has a 50-50 chance of decaying within a single time period, and the radioactive decay of that element will trigger a device which will break open a vial of cyanide, or prussic acid as they called it back in the day, killing the cat, then after an hour has passed away, the cat is in a sense both alive and dead. The timing mechanism, there's no timing mechanism. It all depends on whether or not this radioactive particle emits a particle or photon, depending on what you use, like thorium or promethium or what the fuck ever. But the point is, hey, we don't fucking know. You know? I'm sorry, go on.
Inside the box. The time expires. So at that time, before you look in the box, the cat is sort of in this super imposition of being both dead and alive at the same time. I know that violates the law of logic, but on a quantum level, that's laws of logic get kind of like anally raped. So I mean that's just a crude way of putting it.
Now you'd say the cat either lives or he don't, but quantum mechanics is stubborn and won't. Statistically speaking, the cat, goes the joke, is half a cat breathing and half a cat croaked.
But that's essentially a thought experiment that helps us to explain what the Copenhagen interpretation is. And one of the things that is founded on that is the concept of decoheres. A decohere is essentially an alternate timeline. Like, say I were to go to the kitchen. There's a decohere created when I do that of me not going to the kitchen but going to my living room. And then an alternate decohere comes on, and there's like sort of this alternate universe kind of thing where I actually did go to the living room.
Well, let me just stop you here. The Copenhagen interpretation, by the way, Niels Bohr came up with that, so if you just want to know how recent that is, Niels Bohr. Anyway, nobody can actually agree on what specifically the Copenhagen interpretation is, but it can be boiled down to the lowest common denominator as basically two statements. One, the only reality or the result of experiments conducted by conscious observers on the macroscopic level, and two, subatomic particles have either wave-like or particle-like properties depending on the experiment, but never both at the same time. What you're describing, you keep saying decoheres, quantum decoherence, that's more of a property of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which, FYI, is logically inconsistent with the Copenhagen interpretation, which says that there is no underlying reality.
And then the universe is all completely the same except for that one action. Philosophy and theoretical physics really go hand in hand when you're talking about the subject. So I think if you value theoretical physics, then philosophy is pretty important. Number 2, why does philosophy hold the realm of the unknowable? For instance, God. Well, in my opinion, everything's unknowable. You can't know anything.
Well, yeah, not with that attitude you can't.
Number 3, what certainty can be derived from philosophy? Well, I think certainty itself is derived from philosophy. So, like, if you talk about certainty at all, you're talking about philosophy.
Who invented sliced bread? Well, it just so happens I think philosophy came up with sliced bread. Geez, is there anything you're not going to give philosophy credit for during this dissertation?
What pragmatic value to the common people does philosophy hold? Well, let's look at the 5 core branches of philosophy for a moment.
Oh my god, please let's not. Oh, I've already made too much of this video to just give up now. Okay, fine, the 5 branches.
First branch, metaphysics. What is metaphysics? Metaphysics is concerned with the ultimate meaning of things, meaning of other things. It's concerned in general with things that are more feeling and emotion and thought-based than scientific-based.
Oh my god, I'm already so bored, I wish I was dead. Oh god.
Logical positivism, for instance, in the 20th century, rejected metaphysics as being relevant. Not that it's wrong, but it's not relevant because science can't observe it or comment on it. So a lot of people were like, well, fuck metaphysics then. And a lot of people realized, well, that's not a very productive way of going about trying to establish our knowledge about reality or our certainty about what reality is. So that systemically got abandoned in favor of what's known as naturalism. And naturalism allows for things like metaphysics to be discussed in a substantive way.
Alright, so by your own admission, the first of the 5 branches of philosophy you've discussed is totally fucking irrelevant, and you say that naturalism allows for things like metaphysics. You mean sort of like a gold miner can mine some gold out of the ground and then give it to somebody and say, hey, go play with the shiny, and then that other person can just go play with the shiny after the miner did all the fucking work. Okay, please proceed with the rest of the 4 branches, and I'll try not to kill myself, because it's so tedious.
And these are questions, metaphysical questions are questions that we're going to have just as logical thinking beings, as rational thinking beings. We're going to have questions that pertain to the field of metaphysics, like the question of God's existence. That's a metaphysical question, and it's not something that can be established using science as to whether or not it's true or false.
Wait a second, didn't this whole thing start with what is the pragmatic value of philosophy, and you throw out shit like metaphysical questions like, is there a God? That has zero fucking pragmatic value whatsoever. You're pissing me off.
What's the other ones? Ethics. Very important. Another very important. All of your laws, the way in which you treat other people, the way people treat you, that's ethics. And I think ethics is extremely important for all people. Why would you disregard ethics in any way?
Because the people who like to talk about ethics and morality and things like that are usually the biggest assholes. But as an aside, let me ask you a philosophical question. What's the sound of one hand clapping? This.
Politics is the other one, and political philosophy is by definition a philosophy. Libertarianism, philosophy. Capitalism, philosophy. Free market economy and the advocation of it is a philosophy.
Oh, well, if politics is a philosophy, then philosophy, it must be useful, because so many good things come out of politics, right? Wait, no. What it is just, well, my personal perspective on politics, it's just sort of like a slightly more sophisticated version of apes flinging crap at each other, screeching and prancing around in circles to establish a pecking order.
Number 5. Does the universe have uniformity and purpose, or is it just a fortuitous causal chain of atoms? And I paraphrased it a bit. I apologize if I missed anything in the paraphrase. Please let me know if I did.
Well, uniformity? I don't know what you mean. The universe is pretty uniform on a large scale. Isotropic is the word we like to use. Purpose? I'm going to say probably not. Let's see, causal string of atoms. Well, the thing is, most of the universe doesn't have atoms in it. I mean, by the most mind-bogglingly enormous factor imaginable, it's mainly empty space, which is more of a thing than people give it credit for, but that's a whole other discussion. And then most of the mass of the universe is dark matter, and, you know, there's various things trying to figure out what this is. At one time it was thought to be massive compact halo objects, or machos. Nowadays we think instead of machos, it's WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles. And these would be things like a type of boson as opposed to fermion, and because they don't obey the Pauli exclusion principle and they don't interact electromagnetically, they don't form clumps of stuff like the matter that you and I are made of. And so there may be these ghostly particles whizzing through us every minute of the day, and we just don't know because they interact weakly and through their mass. They may produce Cherenkov radiation, and so we have some detectors at the South Pole set up to detect that very thing. But atoms, let's not flatter ourselves. The stuff that we're made of, it's just like a thin cream on a whole ocean of universe, okay? We are just like an impurity in the product. Make no mistake.
Kierkegaard founded this thing called existentialism, which is a philosophy of I think it can be considered an epistemology, and one of the founding tenets of it is that there is in fact no intrinsic purpose to things, just the things that we establish purpose onto.
Way to state the obvious, Kierkegaard. Well, I lost interest in this video about 5 comments back. I'm running on fumes, so everybody have a nice day, and Mr. Muskoka Man, I hope that I've helped with, add my little special spice to Mr. Lundy's dialogue.